as Mason Ryan in the WWE, and you're listening to Mark Out Radio.
It's time once again for another thrilling episode of Mark Out Radio. For the next hour, sit back, pull the stick out of your ass, and enjoy. Be warned though, smarks and internet know-it-alls will be offended, annoyed, and generally pissed off at what's about to happen to your ear holes. You've been warned. Now, Mark Out Radio.
That's right. Mark Out Radio's back. It is Sunday, September 4th, 2016. You know, I got an email this week asking me why I say the date before I sign on here. It's very simple. Very, very simple. The reason why I say the date is because when I'm talking about shit and you're not sure which show I'm talking about, at least the date gives you an idea. I know, it's stupid, but it's just something I do. So there you go. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about this week. AAA TripleMania 24 happened back on August 28th. I didn't get to that last week. But yeah, I'll get to that this week. Of course, Kevin Owens crowned the new WWE Universal Champion. That was odd. It was really odd, the reaction that garnered online. But, I mean, whatever. Let's see what else is going to be on this show this week. Holy shit. All right, so what else is on this week? Oh, yes, of course. WWE and You. That's right. Little public service announcement on how to watch WWE without being a jaded asshole. I know it's really tough. Believe me, it's really tough. But there are some tricks. There are some tips and tricks on watching the WWE without being an angry, smarky douchebag. So I'll give you some of those ideas. And then if I can get around to it, there's a comprehensive list of WWE main roster wrestlers that you should hate and why, that I found on Reddit a few weeks ago that I haven't still gotten to, and I might even get to it this week. So if you're really bored and want to go find it, go search the Squared Circle subreddit over on Reddit, and I'm sure you're going to find it. If you can't find it that way, the really easy way to find it is Lantern SC is the one that posted it. Maybe I'll throw up a link with the show notes. Who knows? If I don't get to it, I'll throw it up. I'll throw out notes with the show notes probably. All right. The first thing I wanted to get to is something I didn't get to when doing the NXT TakeOver Brooklyn because of the fact that, well, listen, I didn't go into the entire fucking pay-per-view of the Revival Brooklyn or NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2 because Ciampa and Gorgano versus the Revival is probably the greatest match that I saw SummerSlam weekend. Between all of the pay-per-views, all the wrestling promotions, everything else that ran over the SummerSlam weekend, for me, this one blows them all out of the water. And for a lot of reasons. First of all, I am, and I continue to be, a big fan of old school wrestling. I don't know why I do. Listen, I know that there is flippies and all kinds of stuff like that, and Ciampa and Gorgano are definitely that. But that being said, I am a big fan of old school wrestlers, especially old school wrestlers that can get it to go over. And the Revival are fantastic. I mean, first of all, was it Scott Dawson? I think it's Scott Dawson, isn't it? I mean, here, hold on. I'm going to look it up because I feel like if I don't get this right, I will be berated, I'm sure. God damn it, I'm good. Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder. Scott Dawson and I've said it a few times, and I think at one point when I said it the first time, I even tweeted it, and it got retweeted by a bunch of different people, including Scott Dawson and Arn Anderson, because Scott Dawson reminds me of Arn Anderson in so many wonderful ways. Gorgano and Ciampa are so good. I'm not actually even upset that it took them this long to get to WWE. I'm not upset about that at all, and I'm not even upset with them having to break in the WWE with the Cruiserweight Classic gimmick, because it's allowed a lot of wrestlers in that otherwise wouldn't have probably made it that into the WWE, because frankly the WWE just isn't. And listen, a couple years ago, a buddy of mine by the name of Kamikaze got a tryout down in NXT, and they told him essentially when they turned him down was that they had enough 6 foot tall white guys in their roster. And that's a couple years ago now, and that was probably true and continues to be true. However, the Cruiserweight Classic is full of a lot of 6 foot tall and under white guys. And so I feel so bad, because if he'd been able to avoid getting injured and stuff like that, maybe he'd be in that Cruiserweight Classic. Who the fuck knows? He's a fantastic wrestler. Kid loves him. But listen, that's all water on the bridge, because Ciampa and Gorgano versus the Revival was fantastic. I gave the match itself 4.5 out of 5 for a lot of different reasons. Now, here's one of the things. You got to understand with wrestling that you are watching something that's largely choreographed. However, it doesn't mean that the choreography doesn't hurt. It hurts quite a bit. Now, what happens in those matches, though, is that there's a couple different things that wrestlers need to be cognizant of as they're working a match. And one of those things is called ring psychology. And ring psychology, basically, quick and dirty, is getting the fans into what you're doing. Sometimes you've got crowds that are a lot like PWG crowds, that they're just there to watch really great wrestling. They don't give a fuck about heels and faces and gimmicks and programs and feuds and all that other shit. Most, I'm not going to say all, but most PWG fans are there to watch really amazing wrestling. Maybe some flippy dippy shit, maybe some stiff stuff. The whole fucking company's full of amazing stuff. So, but when it comes to the WWE audience, they are, even the NXT crowds, they want to see an actual story. They want to see something. They want to see something transpire in the ring. And it's not that they're jaded, and it's not that they don't know what the fuck it is they're looking at, and it's not that they don't know anything. It's that they're watching that product, just like watching WCW or ECW back in the 90s. It was all about telling a story, not only in the ring, but out of the ring. And one of the major things with wrestling, especially on the indie scene where you don't get these promo segments, is you have to be able to tell a story in the ring. There was very little build up for this match. And by very little, I mean practically non-existent. There were a couple little back and forth segments, and that was the extent of the build-up for this deal. And yet, during the match, people became emotionally invested in the outcome. Now, that's called amazing ring psychology. The wrestling itself, of course, was top-notch. The false finishes, there's tons of false finishes, close counts, near disqualifications. It was fantastic. Both teams had great tandem moves. Ciampa and Gorgano have wrestled together and against each other numerous times. The Revival are a legit tandem-style tag team. They're an old-school tandem-style tag team. You can tell why I mark out for them. But there were some pretty amazing tandem moves going on during the match itself, and just ultimately is a damn fucking fine, entertaining match. And I feel bad that it took me this long to get to it, but I didn't want to just gloss over it. I wanted to give it a little bit. I want to give a little bit of time to explain it. Like, this is the type of match that I really look for when I'm watching wrestling. I know that might sound like I'm dismissing other types of wrestling and other matches and stuff, like heavy gimmick matches and things like, okay, so here's the thing. When you've got a Gold Dust in the ring, that entertains the fuck out of me. And the guy can wrestle. So it's not as though I don't like the over-the-top gimmicks. It's just that this was something that was, nope, none of the gimmicks are super over-the-top. Each team and each wrestler has a gimmick / a personality, and they bring that into the match. I mean, there's been a lot of people online that both love and hate Ciampa and Gorgano, and I can understand, and I see where people are coming from. Gorgano really does, when he's in front of a camera, doing promos and things like that, he does not look like an electrifying wrestler, and yet, as soon as he's wrestling, you forget all about the fact that he's nervous in front of a camera. And I'm sure that's something that, now that he's part of NXT and he's on his farewell tour of the indies, now that he's on NXT, they can help him work out some of those little bugs with being more comfortable in front of a camera. I get that when you look, when he does promos, when you look at him when he's doing in-ring promos or when he's talking to the mic or something like that, I get that people have a problem with that. I understand, because There are a lot of wrestlers that cut amazing promos and wrestle relatively well that never made it past the indies or past the territories. And I understand where people are coming from, but a lot of it has to do with the same thing that any other entertainment venue has to do, or any entertainment product has to do. If you want to be a successful actor, you have to be able to first act, arguably. But then you got to be in the right place at the right time and get lucky, and then also work your ass off once you're in there. If you want to be a successful writer, you've got to be able to actually write, more or less. Then you have to be in the right place at the right time, find the right people, get in the right door, and hope that somebody throws a couple bucks behind your marketing. It's the same thing when you get into wrestling. He's just the right guy at the right place at the right time. And listen, the reason why he's going in NXT and is not going directly right into the main roster is because they understand that there's a couple things they got to work on with him. That is not a negative. I just hate that. The online wrestling community is you got to love it and hate it to a certain extent. The first part is you got to love it because they're really voracious fans. The other part is you got to hate it because they will bury shit as soon as it makes it onto the WWE. There are so many people that were huge Kevin Steen fans, and they went on to NXT and some of them kind of bailed a little bit, and then they were saying, oh, he's changed so much since he went into NXT. He really didn't, but whatever, I understand. It's a perspective thing. And then he made it onto the main roster. He gets onto the main roster, and then all of a sudden, the people that loved him for so long are now just dropping hate bombs all over the place. Oh, he's sold out. He's done this. He's done that. And believe me, we're going to get into a little bit more of Kevin Steen / Kevin Owens as the show goes on here. But let's go time wise here. All right. Now the next thing is AAA Mexican Wrestling TripleMania 24. This happened on August 28th, 2016. Another decent pay-per-view card. There's a few problems, as there always are with AAA when it's on pay-per-view. The first problem is that AAA seems to be plagued by technical difficulties. It was much better this year than it was last year. I very rarely, it sounds horrible, but I will very, very rarely demand a refund. But last year's TripleMania 24, I couldn't even watch it for 2 hours of me buying the actual pay-per-view. I couldn't watch it because the sound kept cutting out, and then the video feed cut out, and then the commentary cut out, and then the sound came back, and then the commentary was there, but there was no video. So I'm listening to the announce team call matches that I can't see. So it's like I'm back in the 1930s in front of a transistor radio listening to a wrestling match. And then the fucking video came back, but then the audio disappeared. So you had the commentary in the video, but you had no sound from the actual venue. And then all of the audio went away, and all you had was the video. And then, as some weird fucking thing to give the fans something to listen to, they played the Spanish announce team on the English pay-per-view feed, which, listen, I don't know Spanish, but I'm sure it was very entertaining because they are very over the top and very Zucru and very excited. But I couldn't help but wonder, why is he so excited? Like there was a guy that, and I don't know his name, and I apologize for that in advance. But maybe it's a good thing I don't know his name because I'm about to fucking shoot on him a bit. But he got very excited at a very simple dive through the ropes plancha. He got very excited. I thought that he had just come in his pants. He was so excited about a plancha. And listen, I understand it's the job of the announce team to put stuff over, but that's essentially putting over an armbar in Mexican wrestling. So it is what it is. This year, though, it was much, much better. However, the audio for the English announce team didn't start until almost 20 minutes into the pay-per-view. The first announcement for the first match was actually already going by the time they had the announce team actually come in, which this year again was Matt Striker. Excellent. Love Matt Striker. I know not a lot of people do, but I do. I think Matt Striker is a fantastic play-by-play guy, and it doesn't hurt that when I met him, he was super nice. Now, The other guy that was with him was Hugo Savinovich, who is normally a AAA announcer. He can also speak flawless. Well, I shouldn't say flawless English. He can speak better than average English as a second language. And they did the English commentary, although Vampiro did come to do play-by-play with Matt Striker during the Lucha Underground Trios match. But we'll get to that when we get to that. That was your announce team. Really good. As far as announce teams go, I'm not going to say perfect or excellent or awesome, but I'm going to say really good because of the fact that Matt Striker knows what the fuck it is he's doing. He's able to throw to his co-host without it being painful pass off. So let's go through the card a little bit here. Like I said, the whole card I gave 3 out of 5. It was a solid card. I wouldn't say it was phenomenal or jaw-dropping or anything like that, but it is a lot of flippy, and Mexican wrestling is very big business down there. I mean, there's 2 huge companies down there, and there are 2 WWEs basically down in Mexico, and they compete with one another. And they go on each other's products sometimes as well to a little cross promotion and shit. And they have their little territories and stuff. However, everybody's territory is the city of Mexico. So you get both products in Mexico, and it's really good. Now, that being said, first match was a 12-man Rumble style match, which had no build whatsoever. And I'm going to say no build whatsoever because of the fact that, listen, We're watching AAA wrestling. You don't get to see a lot of it up here in Canada. You don't get to see a lot of it in a lot of the American states. You definitely don't get to see a lot of it over in Europe. So they really have to build matches with promo packages beforehand. Now, the WWE does this to a certain extent as well. However, they also are widely televised. And so the idea is that the idea behind doing promos before matches is to build up the suspense for the match. It's not a bad idea. It's actually a really wonderful idea, especially if you watch the WWE passively. With AAA, you don't have a lot of options to watch AAA every single week. And even if you do watch AAA every single week, you would have to have the ability to speak Spanish well enough to understand what the fuck is going on here. And since I'm just a sad little gringo who knows dick all in Spanish, well, listen. I need an English announce team for the same reason as I mute the audio commentary in Japanese wrestling, because it's a distraction to me. I can't understand what's going on. I get frustrated, and so I can't handle listening to announcing that I don't know what the fuck is going on. That being said, so they started off with a 12-man Rumble style match. It was basically a spot fest. And here's another criticism I have for AAA is that their camera work is fucking awful. It is fucking awful. It is okay. There are times when I'm watching WWE product, and you know how sometimes they do that little zoom in, zoom out thing that Kevin Dunn gives Kevin Dunn a hard on or something. They'll do that zoom in, zoom out when there's like a big move or a high impact move or something. And there was a point in time when they were doing it for every move. Like they would do it for a backdrop. They do the zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. And it gives you motion sickness when they do it, because it's so painful the way they do it. Now, with AAA, they don't do the zoom in, zoom out. However, there's action going on in the ring, and they're constantly cutting to the crowd to show you crowd reaction. And I would say, and I'm being very generous here, I'm going to say that 8 times out of 10, there is no fucking reaction of the crowd. A lot of the times, the cameramen cut to a hot chick. To the point where, and this is the funny thing, was later on in the show, Matt Striker started to be a creep because he was making fun. Not because he is a creep. Don't get me wrong. Matt Striker likes a pretty girl paying attention to him. But Matt Striker will be a creep to be a smartass. And so every time the footage that was making it onto the pay-per-view was of a pretty girl at ringside, pretty much just sitting there watching the match passively. Like, honestly, here, watching the match. He's a half-naked man. Yes. Oh, no, this is very interesting. Yes. No, it's very interesting. No, it's super interesting. Oh, there's a camera there. Hi. Hi. That is what you're cutting to every fucking 5 minutes in a AAA match during this pay-per-view. And it's mind-numbing. It's literally the most annoying thing in the world. The last thing I want to see when I'm watching wrestling is some hot bitch at ringside doing nothing. If you are doing nothing in wrestling, you might as well just dye your hair red. All right? And that's it. I'm just going to leave it at that. So the fact that the camera work was so goddamn awful made it really hard to enjoy an otherwise mediocre match. I'm sorry, it was a mediocre match. I gave it 2 out of 5 because of the fact that, listen, it was a spot fest, but it had Australian Suicide, who I've never seen before, but is actually a very good wrestler. Daga, who I don't like at all as a wrestler. I don't think he's very entertaining. I don't think he's a very good wrestler. He looks very plain. He looks like an average everyday guy with big ears. And I don't buy anything he's doing in the ring. I understand that maybe some Spanish people think that he's attractive. Some Mexicans maybe think he's attractive, but he's not. He's not an attractive looking guy. There was a guy in this match that it was attractive. All right. And who was it here? It was Mamba. I think was it Mamba or was it Parada Morgan? I think it was Parada Morgan. Anyways, there was one guy that was in this match that was legitimately good looking, and he was kind of like a Shawn Michaels throwback. He does a lot of super kicks. He's very chiseled. He's very pretty and shit. And that's a guy I can understand Mexican ladies going gaga for. This guy just looks like a fucking mutant, and I don't understand why he gets over. I don't understand why people find him attractive, but whatever. Then you had La Parka. Listen, I've been watching wrestling for some time, and when I watched WCW religiously when they introduced the cruiserweight division, because by the way, for those of you who don't know, the cruiserweight division was a WCW invention. In the WWE, it was called the light heavyweight division. Fun fact. Now, I'm glad that they're calling it cruiserweight because cruiserweight's a better name for it. But La Parka was in the cruiserweight division because he does all the flippy shit. And La Parka looks basically, you know when you were a kid and you're dressed like a skeleton and you put a hood over your head? That's essentially what La Parka's gimmick looks like. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's what La Parka looks like. And he's got a very funny little Ric Flair-esque walk that he does. El Adige, I'm gonna slaughter these fucking names, and I'm sorry. I'm a gringo. That's what's gonna happen. I know that I even say gringo like a fucking gringo. I get it. All right. Alaguido, El Zorro. El Zorro was really weird looking. He kind of his ring gear basically looked like something that you would, when back in the 90s when you would go to indie or territory shows and you'd see the wrestlers wearing they weren't wearing the vinyl tights yet. They were wearing like spandex tights. That's what this guy was wearing. He was wearing like a blue Elvis bodysuit of tights. It was very weird. But anyways, Taurus is the epitome of a horrible gimmick wrestler. He comes out looking like a big bull, and he's Rusev-like in size, so he is a big bull. He has hairy boots. He's got what? It's not bull hair, okay? It was like white and brown. It was cow hair, but long. Boots. He's got like Conan the Barbarian type get up on. It's just very fucking weird. El Hijo del Paramorgan, Pimpinella Escalada was in this match for 2.5 seconds. Fuck. Pimpinella is like the gold dust of Mexican wrestling. So fantastic. I don't know why I think that he's awesome, but he's just awesome. Mamba, Superfly, Hernandez. I like Hernandez. I know that not a lot of people like Hernandez, and I know a lot of promoters like Hernandez, but I like Hernandez. And then Argentis. And his name is spelled Argentis, but it's pronounced Argentis, whatever. I think he's a fantastic wrestler. I don't think he's on Lucha Underground enough. I think he's great. Now, this was a 12-man Rumble style match, and basically everyone gets eliminated except it's over the top rope Rumble. Everyone gets eliminated except Australian Suicide and Daga. And here was one of the more painful problems with their production is that then they give the referee, this big fat guy with an attempt at bleaching his hair. A microphone. First microphone doesn't work. Second microphone doesn't work. They got to wait to get a microphone that does work. Finally finds a microphone that does work. He cuts a promo for about 3.5 seconds, which gets translated for us by Hugo, that this match is now to be contested under normal rules. So it was a 12-man Rumble-style match that ended with the last two competitors being able to do pins or submissions. And there was a reason for that, because the ending was going to be a submission. Spoiler alert. Anyways, Australian Suicide wins. I thought he was a good wrestler. The announce team kept going on and on about how it's like Daga's destiny to win this. It's Daga's whatever to win this. So you kind of just thought that he wasn't going to win it because he's already a heel. If he was a face, he probably would have won. But because he's a heel, obviously he's not going to win. The match after that was an intergender tag team match. Now, when I say it's an intergender tag team match, I mean it was 2 girls against 2 guys. And we got a feel for the build-up for this, sort of, kind of, not really, but the announce team was the one that gave us the build-up. So essentially, Fabi and Marie Apache, who are the daughters of the great Apache, who is their dad. What a stupid sentence that was. I'm sorry. Anyways, basically the build-up for this was that Averno and Chessman were saying how the woman's place is in the kitchen. Cheap heat. The woman's place is in the kitchen, blah, 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 blah. Imagine any sexist thing that you could say to or about a woman, and that's what they basically said during this whole build-up for this thing. Now, Hugo was supposed to be the heel announcer, and Matt was playing the face announcer, and Hugo had trouble sticking to his gimmick, but he's used to being the face announcer, so I get it. He's also the straight man sometimes, so I get that being the heel announcer is kind of tough for him. They really should have let Matt be the heel announcer, even though he does such a fantastic job as the straight and face heel announcer, the straight man and the face announcer. But there's no reason why a heel announcer can't be also the play-by-play, the straight man that gives people the names of the moves and stuff. There's no reason why that. It's just a stupid wrestling tradition. When you have wrestling team-ups where one announcer is the heel and one announcer is the face, and then no one calls moves and things like that, it's fucking annoying, and it takes away from the believability of the wrestling product, in my opinion. All right. Now, here's the thing. We are watching 2 women fight 2 men, and because it's a lot of this flippy Mexican-style wrestling, it really went over. Really went over. I gave the match 3 out of 5, even though it ended in a no contest. The big deal with this was that Great Apache was playing tough love with his daughters. He doesn't think his daughters should be wrestlers, even though he trained them to be wrestlers. What the fuck kind of gimmick is whatever? So he doesn't think they should be wrestlers. He agrees with Averno and Chessman that women shouldn't be allowed to be wrestlers. And then he calls for a disqualification because Averno broke a bundle of 3 light tubes, those long light tubes, again, filled with baby powder. I love that gimmick. And the fact that they bundled 3 of them together, whatever. The unfortunate problem is that when the ring people handed it to them, what they're supposed to do when they put the baby powder in is there's like the talcum powder is they're supposed to shake it around inside so that it sticks to the inside of the walls of the tube. If they just pour it in, it all settles at the bottom. So all the sediment settled at the bottom so that when Averno smashed, I think it was Fabi over the head, with the light tubes, there was no big poof. It was just a little, and then he shook it a little bit to get the talcum powder out. But of course, by that point, it's getting in her eyes and shit. So he's shaking it into her face, which is unfortunate. But quick little tip, gringos say, when you put baby powder in light tube, shake it up a little bit. Get the baby powder to coat the inside of the light tube, because then when you smash it, you get big explosion looking bullshit. But anyways, the camera, at least in this case, the camera got off of her just about long enough because when the camera came back to her, she was disposing of the blade underneath her, sliding it across the ring to her dad. Whoops. Unfortunately, because like I say, the camera work is fucking god awful, they caught the blading, which with the amount of lights going on, it's just shining off of the mat, and daddy takes it and shoves it out of the ring before going and cradling his daughter's head in his hands, because now he's decided that He might not agree that his girls should wrestle, but damn me if they aren't going to die and bleed in the ring. It was such a fucking weird match. But it's very hacky 80s style wrestling. So I guess if you're into that, then whatever. Next match was Drago and Aerostar going over on Angelico and Jack Evans, who are the former AAA champs. Paul London and Matt Cross. You guys might know Matt Cross in his mask from Lucha Underground as Son of Havoc. And then Hijo del Fantasma and Garza Jr. It's just a solid match. I gave it 2.5 out of 5, but it was another one of those big spot fest things. Aerostar and Angelico, of course, walk away with having the greatest high spots of the match. I mean, I could describe to you the shit that they did, but let's just say I've shared moves that Angelico has done in Lucha Underground numerous times on the Facebook and on the Twitter feed. Go look at those. Go to markoutradio.com. Click on the links to our social media and shit. I've shared lots of stuff like that. If you've watched Lucha Underground, you've seen what I'm talking about, and you don't need me to sit here and describe it to you again. I'm going to leave it at this. It's worth watching the match just to see those two high spots. Seriously, it was good. And of course, Drago is huge over in AAA, and Aerostar is huge over in AAA. They've got the AAA championships now. That's good. I like them. I like them as much. I know Drago is very gimmicky. I understand that, but it's a gimmick that gets over. I enjoy it. After that, you got Johnny Mundo going over on Pentagon Jr. for the Latin American Championships. I gave that one 3.5 out of 5. It was a phenomenal match. It was like America versus Mexico. Very cool match. The screwjob ending was not that big a shock to anybody who watches anything except AAA. Pentagon Jr. came down to the ring with Taya, and everybody that watches Lucha Underground, which was featured prominently all over the AAA, knows that Taya and Johnny Mundo are either friends or more whatever. The fact that she was not in his little stable was weird. The fact that she was on Pentagon Jr.'s arm was odd. And so when you see her kick Pentagon Jr. in the balls and then Johnny Mundo get the pin, it wasn't exactly that big of a shock of a screwjob ending. So I will not fault it for that, in that heels are supposed to win with chicanery, and that's just how things happen. The next match was the Lucha Underground match. They had Rey Mysterio, Prince Puma, Azteca Dragon Jr. Again, I can't stand Azteca Dragon Jr. I don't know why. I just can't. Maybe he'll grow on me. I don't know. Marty the Moth versus Marty the Moth Martinez, Matanza, who was horrible, and Mil Muertes, who was great. And it was essentially a good match, like a good to great match with lots of great high spots. I don't know what was up with Matanza. Like, he's not exactly, like, he's supposed to be the big rumbling monster, the big strong guy or whatever, but we've seen him do flip moves. We've seen him sell flip moves. We've seen him do all that stuff in Lucha Underground. So the fact that he was so plodding around and almost dinosaur-like in his delivery, it was either another guy that we weren't seeing in Lucha Underground, or he was injured, or maybe he was just performing like shit. I don't know, but it was really, he stunk up the match. It was just, every time he was in the ring, he just stinking the joint up. After that was for the Mega Championship. It was Texano, who's still the Mega Champion. I'm pretty sure he won it from Del Rio, or El Patron, anyways, when he was there. And he defeated Brian Cage and Dr. Wagner Jr. Now, I'm going to give it the rating of the match. I gave it 3 out of 5 because it was a good match. There's nothing really wrong with the match itself. The big problem I had with everything that was going on was that the announce team went to great lengths in waxing philosophical about how Dr. Wagner Jr. has never lost at TripleMania. He's never lost there. He's never been defeated at TripleMania. They didn't go as far as to call it a streak, but they did say that he's undefeated at TripleMania. And that, without saying, is a streak. So they went on to wax philosophical pretty much the entire match about how he's never lost here. He's got to win. He's got to get the title because he's never lost a match here at TripleMania. And strictly speaking, Texano pinned Brian Cage. So then now the announce team is playing up the fact that, Well, Dr. Wagner still hasn't lost a TripleMania because technically Brian Cage was the one that got pinned, which is that's kind of not how that works. Because if you don't win a match, even if you weren't the one that got pinned, you've lost the match. Unless it's a no contest, in which case there's no winners or losers. So he's lost at TripleMania. I don't care what lame, goofy fucking thing you want to come up with now, but Dr. Wagner has lost. The streak is over, and Texano beat the streak. I'm saying it right now. Texano destroyed the streak of Dr. Wagner. There, that's it. Fuck you. You can't say that he's never lost a match at TripleMania and then have him not win the match. I mean, I get it that he wasn't the one that got pinned, but guess what? Texano won, and there were 2 losers because it's a triple threat match. There was 1 winner and 2 losers, and the 1 winner was Texano Jr., and the 2 losers were Brian Cage and Dr. Wagner, okay? That's it. It's in the story, all right? Jesus fucking Christ. It's so weird. Now, the big draw for the main event for the entire pay-per-view was going to be Psycho Clown versus Pagano in a hardcore hair versus mask match. Psycho Clown's mask up against Pagano's hair. Now, there's 2 things I want to point out here. But I've watched 2 AAA pay-per-views. They were both TripleManias. And in both of them, Psycho Clown's mask gets ripped within about 2 or 3 minutes of a match. Like, it's a vinyl mask, and it gets ripped, the top from here up to about here gets ripped off within about the first 2 minutes. So you see his face. I know you don't see his cheekbones. I know you don't see his chin or his pouty mouth. But you do see his fucking face. You see his eyes and his forehead pretty much the entire match. It's a lot like when Mil Muertes does a press conference as his Mexican counterpart. He has a very distinctive tattoo. It's an entire left pectoral muscle all down his arm. Distinctive tattoo. So when you see and I can't remember, and I apologize, I can't remember what the fuck his name is in AAA, but when you see him in AAA tonight on TripleMania, he was there as Mil Muertes. So when you see him in a press conference last year when he was his alter ego in AAA, and you see the very distinctive tattoo and stuff, it's very weird. It's a lot like Prince Puma and Ricochet. They seem to have the same tattoo and body, even though Prince Puma wears the leopard print mask and the leopard print tights and the fuzzy cuffs. And then Ricochet just wears, like, you know, briefs and kick pads and stuff, but yet they still have the same physique and tattoo. It's almost like they're don't say it. Just leave that one alone. I get that the mask is a big deal, and that's wonderful. I'm glad that the mask is a big deal, but it's just very weird to me that that we've seen Ricochet perform in AAA, and then we see Prince Puma perform in AAA. It's very weird. And you've seen Mil Muertes perform in AAA, and you've seen his Mexican alter ego perform. It's very odd. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's very odd. Anyway, back to the match. Psycho Clown defeats Pagano. The other thing I was going to say was Pagano doesn't really have hair. He's balding, but he's got like a mohawk. Everything is shaved right bald on the sides and the back. He's just got a red mohawk. So when the match is, the both guys, of course, got color because that's a hardcore match, and I'll explain more about that later. But both guys got color, and his mohawk is red. So when the match is ending, and they had Psycho Clown cut the hair, I was actually kind of terrified because it looked like he's grabbing a handful of red and cutting. He's just cutting really fucking close to the scalp. And granted, he's probably not going to get much scalp, but it's not exactly all hard skin. Like it, there's, you know, it was very weird. And then they had listen, I get it that not all hairdressers are straight, and that's cool. This hairdresser looked like a wrestler though. He was big. He was bigger. Like, he was more built than either of these 2 guys in the match. And he's just standing in front of the camera. Every time the camera's panning down the aisle or panning here, panning there, he's right in front of it. He's at the worst placement ever. I think he's probably just a trainee or something, but he's really bad. And then it took about 10 minutes from the end of the match. No, you know what? It took longer than that because the end of the match comes and Dr. Wagner came down to support Pagano. And Hugo was doing translation for us because, listen, Matt's almost as big a gringo as I am, except he's more tanned and looks better. Now, he can't do the translation, so Hugo's doing the translation, but of course he can't keep up to what's happening on the mic. So he's basically giving us cliff notes of what has gone on here. And Pagano cuts a promo real quick on Dr. Wagner for not, being there for him or something. I don't fucking know. And then that took about 5 minutes. And then Dr. Wagner challenges Psycho Clown to a mask versus mask match at the next TripleMania. And that took about 10 minutes of promo. So then about 20 minutes after the end of the match, we finally get around to the haircutting thing. And what looked like was going to happen was that the fucking hairdresser was going to cut Pagano's hair off, which is not sort of what I think is supposed to happen in a hair match. It's supposed to be the guy that beat you is supposed to cut your hair. But I don't really care if the guy cuts his hair or a fucking other guy cuts his hair. I don't give a shit. But then Pagano takes the scissors from the fucking hairdresser and gives them to Psycho Clown. So the Psycho Clown does a little bit of hair trimming. He trims his hair. He takes it in his hand. He goes up on the ropes, whatever. 30 minutes after the fucking end of the match, we finally have a haircut. It was just the most drawn out, painful thing ever. Now, I will say this. The match was long, and it wasn't a bad long. It was a very entertaining long. I gave it 3.5 out of 5. There were a few things that I thought were pretty funny, considering wrestling fans are doing this, but there was more than a few people on Twitter that were expressing concerns of all the little kids that the cameras kept cutting to, because again, the camera works for shit here, and the cameraman kept cutting to the kids' reactions, and they stopped cutting to hot chicks, because every time they cut to a hot chick, Matt Striker would go, "Oh, hello. Oh, hello." And he was doing it to be a dick, and it was funny as fuck. But people on Twitter were blowing it up saying Matt was being creepy. And I think he was being creepy, but in a way is to say, I'm making fun of the stupidity of this. That's my opinion. He could have also been saying, "Oh, hello," because they were all hot chicks. Now, what was happening now was that the cameramen weren't cutting anymore to hot chicks. They were now cutting to little kids. Some of them were crying. Some of them were freaking out. And the thing is that the promotion, the promotional thing that was behind this main event match was Ben-Hur. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Ben-Hur flopped horribly. But Ben-Hur is a fairly violent movie, but it's from a big Hollywood studio. I was a little bit amazed that Ben-Hur was the promotional movie for a hardcore bloody match like that, but this is also the country where bullfighting happens, and kids go watch bullfighting. Kids watch a bull being systematically murdered I don't care, personally. I don't care if bulls are killed. I don't give a fuck. But kids go and watch bullfights. So the fact that the people on Twitter were blowing up AAA's spot for cutting to kids crying and reacting and stuff like that, this is a country that has bullfights. Calm the fuck down. Seriously, calm down. Now, most of the tables and walls, and of course the doors that were ringside that the announce team kept saying, "Oh, he's going through a door, he's going through a table," were like 1/16 inch MDF with balsa wood framing. So I will say that going through the tables and stuff during this match was kind of funny, and every time they did it, and the stuff was crunching like it was that. Did you ever have like that plasticky foam board shit that you would do something on at school, and you ever, when you cut it and you had to crack it or whatever, it would make this weird crackly pop noise? That's what every time somebody went through a table or a door or a wall that was basically this shitty MDF with balsa wood framing. That's what it sounded. It sounded an awful lot like packing pellets cracking. And the one thing was that, so at the end of the match, and this was really hilarious because it doesn't even happen in WWE because it's so bad, but they put an actual table up in the corner, and this is where the last big spot was going to be, and they lit a mop handle with a mop soaked in gasoline or kerosene, what the fuck ever, lighter fluid or whatever. They lit the mop handle on fire, and then they put the lighter fluid on the table, and then they tried to light the lighter fluid on fire, and it wouldn't light. And it took like 2 or 3 minutes for them to light the fire on the table. They had to get the lighter fluid back from the ring monkey. They had to hold the torch on the table and then spray and spray and spray and spray the lighter fluid on the table until finally the table caught on fire. Now, the table caught on, well, the lighter fluid on top of the table caught on fire. And then they had to get to the spot really, really fast. And then Pagano was the one that ended up going through the table. And then Pagano spent about 30 to 45 seconds rolling around on the fire, trying to light himself on fire. I'm not sure if he's aware. I'm not sure if anyone told him, but things that are wet tend to not burn. And at that point, the match had been going on for 25 minutes or so, and he was fairly soaked in sweat, and his little muscle shirt was fairly soaked in sweat, so nothing was lighting on fire. All he was doing was giving himself blisters from the fire. Nothing was going to light on fire. His hair wasn't going to light up. Nothing was going to light. Unless he had doused himself in the lighter fluid, he wasn't going up, but he kept trying to make himself go up. Anyways, like I said, the end of the match was really horrible and convoluted. The pay-per-view could have been better had they had a competent AV team, and by competent I mean high school kids. I think it probably could have been better with if they were going to build up with the announced teams. They probably could have built up with a little bit more sense being made of what was happening. But it wasn't a horrible pay-per-view. It was a decent pay-per-view. Last year when I got it, it was so awful. I demanded a refund and got one. I will say this year that had I not been at a bar where it was being televised, I probably would have done the same thing. But because I went to a bar to watch this and there was no head charge or anything like that, I didn't have to ask him for a refund or anything because, listen, I got what I wanted out of it with the beer. So there you go. Fairly decent pay-per-view, though. If you want to watch it, you probably should. Decent pay-per-view. Now, if you watch wrestling at all, even if you don't like the WWE for whatever your reason is, I don't care. You probably know that Kevin Owens was crowned the new Universal Champion. Now, his winning, and I've put, if you're watching the video for this, either on YouTube or on Ustream, or even watching it live, you will see Kevin Owens with his little boy the day after he won the title, because he was home to take his son to his first day of school, and that's really sweet and shit. Brought the title home so that the kid could, have it. Now, he brought it home so fast that they haven't put his little cute nameplate things on there yet. There are nameplate things. His aren't on there yet. So that's how fast he came home. Now, when I say there was an odd reaction online, I'm going to start with, here's the thing. I'm going to start with the online reaction, and we're just sort of going to spiral out of control from here. All right. A lot of people online called out Jim Cornette, and the reason why they called out Jim Cornette online is because Jim Cornette has gone on record numerous times saying that the WWE, the way it is right now, will never allow a guy like Kevin Steen to be a champion. And he means a champion beyond the IC title or the US title. He means like the man or whatever champion. And even if they did let him be the champion, he would never be a top guy. Now, it seems pretty clear to me that both of those things have happened. Here's the other thing. Jim Cornette wasn't really wrong, because Vince McMahon's WWE would never have let a guy like Kevin Owens be the champion. I'm sorry. They just wouldn't. I know that they did with Mick Foley, and that was because he was hardcore and all that other stuff. I get that, in Jim Cornette's opinion, Vince McMahon's WWE would never let this happen. He was wrong. Let me tell you something. It's all right to be fucking wrong. And in this case, it's actually a wonderful thing to be wrong. Now, some of these assholes on the internet were quickly silenced by Jim Cornette fans. And I think Jim Cornette mostly stayed out of it, which is smart on his part. But a lot of fans cut promos on the assholes calling out Jim Cornette, saying that, what kind of fucking wrestling fan are you that you don't know that the GM of the show that Kevin Owens is now the champion of was also legitimately the WWF champion. Not the Universal champion, not the WCW title, none of that shit. He was the legitimate WWF champion. The same fucking Eagle belt that Bret Hart wore, the same fucking belt that Steve Austin wore, that same fucking belt was around Mick Foley's waist. Now, granted, it was also around Mick Foley's waist after it was shattered, but that happened a few years later. Now, one of the other things that happened online was a lot of people said, oh, big deal, Kevin Owens is the champ. He's just going to be a transitional champ until Finn Balor is better. First of all, even if that's true, who cares? We now have 8 to 12 weeks of Kevin Owens defending the Universal title on television and cutting promos. And then when Balor does come back, we've got a build until the next pay-per-view when Balor will then go for the belt. Let's just say that they want the belt on Balor and that Kevin Owens is a traditional champ. I don't believe that, but let's just say for the sake of arguments that he is. So you've got 16 weeks. You've got four fucking months of Kevin Owens as the fucking champ. 4 months as Kevin Owens as the champ. 4 months of a fat guy as the fucking champion. Who cares if he's a transitional champion? Who fucking cares? Allow yourself for just a fucking moment to be entertained by what's happening. Allow yourself to understand for just a second that you've got 4 months of Kevin Owens coming out and defending the title and cutting promos on people. It's going to be fucking awesome. And I don't even like the WWE's programming. And I'm still excited for what's going to happen. Now, what really blew up this week is because Triple H came out to give him the title. And so what ended up happening on Twitter and on Facebook and fucking on Reddit and everywhere else was 2 things. 1, oh, why is Paul stealing his thunder? First of all, Triple H is not stealing fucking Kevin Owens' thunder. Kevin Owens wouldn't be in the WWE if Triple H hadn't fucking worked to get Vince to at least sign Kevin Owens to a developmental deal to be in the WWE. And then Kevin Owens went to the NXT and had to prove himself. A guy that's been wrestling for the better part of 15 years had to prove himself in the developmental system. And then he gets brought up to the main roster. They give him the IC title and he fucking owns the shit out of that crap. But listen, he wouldn't be there to own the shit out of it if Hunter hadn't been working his ass off to get him there, to get him a deal, to get him in there. Kevin Owens is not your stereotypical wrestler. Just look at him. First of all, he's about family. How many stereotypical big deal wrestlers have you known over the years? I'm going to give you 2 prime examples of 2 guys that were top guys. I'll give you 3. Hulk Hogan couldn't give a fuck about his family while he was wrestling. To the point where he was fucking around on his wife for years with women and allegedly men. Bret Hart's fucking kids wouldn't talk to him until he was out of wrestling for 5 fucking years. Do you think that's because he was dad of the year? Get the fuck out of here. Honestly? And then John Cena, who's never fucking even had a kid. You got Kevin Owens, and here's the guy, first of all, not stereotypical because A, he's quote unquote fat. The most fucking physically fit fat guy I've ever seen in my life. But listen, he gets called out all the time for it. Whatever. I'll chalk it up to that. Whatever. And then the day after he wins, he's back home with his fucking kid, taking him to school the next day. What the fuck? And Triple H had to fight to get this guy a chance. And then the fucking internet wrestling community is going to blow up Triple H's spot. Now, the second one, which I thought was pretty fucking funny because they claim that Hunter had nothing to do with Kevin Owens getting over the fans. That is true. I will give that some credence because Kevin Owens gets himself over. He doesn't need that stuff. But do you think he'd ever even be on TV? Do you think he would ever been brought to TV if Triple H hadn't been working his ass off to get him to TV? And then when he does Kevin Steen then just owns the shit out of it and just dominates and gets really over with the fans. Now, for the last 5 minutes here, this is where it's going to lead us with, the WWE and you, and how to not be a dick when you're watching WWE. Here's something that you got to understand where we're at right now with the WWE. Now, up until a few weeks ago, Reigns was still being forced down our throats, just like John Cena had been, and just like Hogan had been, but now Reigns is in the mid-card feuding for the U.S. title. That's a good thing. Listen, he was never going to go away, but the fact that he's down, I shouldn't say down because it's not a demotion or anything, but the fact that he's wrestling for the U.S. title and working on his fucking gimmick and working on those fucking promos, because the promos are still fucking god-awful, the fact that he's down there working on that shit is good news for all of us, because if he can't get his shit together just going for the U.S. strap, just like anybody else, he'll be gone. But if he does pull his shit together, he could... Listen, The Rock got shat on just as much as Reigns is getting shit on now. I was around in that time, I know. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible that he could pull his shit together and be a next entertaining wrestler like his cousin The Rock. Who the fuck knows? Worst case scenario, though, he's gone, because if he can't fucking pull together a program with the U.S. title, no one's going to give him another chance at the world title. When they've got guys like Kevin Steen, when they've got guys like Sami Zayn just waiting, chomping at the bit to prove how they're fucking worth it. The major champs here. Let's go over the major champs. You now have Ambrose as the world champion. Ambrose came to be known by being a CZW hardcore wrestler and then being in the Ring of Honor doing hardcore matches in the Ring of Honor. Where we should have a champion who's 6'5" and 260 fucking pounds, you've got a guy that's 6 feet tall and 215 pounds. He's my size. What the fuck are you complaining about? And now people are bitching on him because he only does a couple of moves so he can stay healthy and keep earning that money and keep holding on to that title. Listen, I get it. He's not, hardcore anymore. I understand that fucking pisses people off. I get it. The guy's going to have a longer career. He's going to be around to entertain the fuck out of us. He still cuts a pretty fucking damn decent promo. And I get it. Maybe he's not as electrifying in the ring as you would hoped he was going to be. But let's remember also the WWE is anti-blood. How much fucking hardcore shit do you think he can get away with without getting blood? How many chairs did he throw in the ring in that match with Brock Lesnar? And still, no one's getting blood. Here's the other thing. Now you've got Owens as the Universal Champ. Now he's 6 feet tall and 240 pounds. He's in wicked shape, despite the fact that he's got a gut. He's in wicked fucking shape. I challenge half of the fucking internet smarks to try to get into that kind of shape. 5 years ago, he wouldn't have even made it into the NXT. Never mind making it as the NXT champion for however long. Miz, like him or not, I don't care. But he's 6'2" and he's 220 pounds. Again, he's my size. And yes, he wrestles in a traditional, quote unquote, safe style. But he's the fucking Intercontinental Champion and he's normal person size. He is not fucking huge. He is not the usual Hulk Hogan type guy. Just understand for a second that this is a person that is of a normal stature as an IC champion. This is really good news for wrestling fans who like to watch realistic wrestling. Because, listen, as much as the WWE likes to think that Brock Lesnar brings a quote-unquote realism to wrestling, he doesn't. Brock Lesnar is a freak. He's a genetic freak show of nature. Look at the fucking guy. He has to walk sideways through doorways. I've seen it in person. He is not a normal-sized person. He's not a normal-sized guy. Having your champions as Ambrose and Owens and Miz, who are normal guys that can walk through a doorway without needing to suck it in and turn sideways, is good news for wrestling fans that want realistic wrestling. Now, the one exception of this is Rusev. Now, again, he's 6 feet tall, but he's 300 fucking pounds. He's an absolute fucking beast, and he just keeps getting bigger. I get it. He doesn't work soft, and he just doesn't also get needlessly stiff with the guys he works with. He could potentially teach Reigns how to not suck balls in matches. Again, good news for all of us. But This is why rational wrestling fans can't have nice things. Because we have nice things. We've got 3 out of the 4 major champions that are normal-sized dudes. And granted, if you really, really took your vitamins and said your prayers and ate a shit ton of protein, you could maybe get Rusev size. Most of us have probably been close to Rusev size in the gut area. But the fact that you've got 3 out of the 4 major champions as being normal, average, everyday sized men is fucking awesome. And yet wrestling fans are still fucking bitching about this stuff. We're finally getting champions that don't look like Hogan and Kevin Nash. Can we just be fucking happy with that for just a moment? I get it. No one's ever happy forever, but oh my God, this is why Vince doesn't listen to wrestling fans. This is why the creative team is told to block fucking asshole smarks on fucking Twitter and not engage them because of the fact that we bitch and moan about this stuff collectively as wrestling fans. And yet here we are getting what we want. We're getting what we want. Listen, I get it. The WWE is like the Hollywood of wrestling. You get a lot of glitz and glam, and it's not very big on substance. It's big on big explosions and fireworks and over-the-top gimmicks and things like that. I understand. And the indies are like the Broadway or London's East End of wrestling. You see the greatest performances happening here, but no one fucking ever sees them except snotty, elitist assholes. So here's an idea. You're going to sit down to watch a Hollywood movie. You're going to sit down to watch the Avengers of wrestling in the WWE. Understand that what you're about to watch is not going to be literary or media gold. Understand what you're going to watch is going to be a lot of flash, a lot of special effects, and if you're very, very, very fortunate, you're going to have a handful of people that can do amazing performances. That is what the WWE is right now. If you want to watch the Hollywood of wrestling, watch the WWE and understand what you're watching is going to be lots of glitz and glam. It's not going to be what the indies are, in your opinion. It's not going to be these flippy moves where these guys that are in the indies hurt themselves all the fucking time doing moonsaults into front row of chairs and stuff. Just understand that these guys want to have a longer career than that. Plus, there's also rules in the WWE where no color, they don't want a lot of chair shots, they don't want a lot of other weird shit. Just understand when you're watching the WWE, we're starting to finally get what we've been bitching about since the death of the Attitude Era. You're starting to finally get normal-sized guys putting on believable wrestling matches in the ring. Allow yourself to enjoy it for just a while. Just unplug that cynical part of your brain and just be entertained. Okay? It's not going to be the indies. All right? You are going to find a handful of guys, and I'm not going to say who they are because I may miss some people, but you are going to get some guys in the WWE putting on classic, awesome performances. All right? You're going to get that. You're also going to get guys like John Cena and Roman Reigns that do spot moves and basic wrestling. And there's nothing fucking wrong with that. Stop being so fucking cynical and bitchy about it, okay? Just understand what you're watching. When I watch the WWE, I watch it very passively. I will watch Raw and SmackDown on my PVR, and I'll sort of watch it out of the corner of my eye. Maybe I'm doing some writing, maybe I'm playing some video games or something like that. I will watch it very passively. When I watch things like PWG or Lucha Underground, Evolve, AAA, New Japan, Ring of Honor, I watch them actively. And the reason why I watch them actively is because there's a lot of shit that happens in those promotions and other ones that I've left out. And I apologize for leaving them out, but I'm just trying to get the meat of the liver here. What is happening in those matches happens so fast and so furious that you kind of got to watch it more actively, in my opinion, how I watch it. Now, I like traditional wrestling storytelling, but I like modern movesets. So what the stuff that happens in the WWE is interesting for me. In that there's a storyline happening. Sometimes it sucks. And sometimes the wrestling matches themselves are pretty fucking horrible. When you go to an indie though, you're not seeing a lot of long drawn storylines. You're not seeing feuds. Really, you're really not. And the feuds are not exactly even as long as WWE version of feuds. And when you do get feuds, it's almost always told in the ring. There's not a lot of promo going on, so you end up having that. Ring of Honor tried to do promos. They've tried to do stuff in the background. It kind of doesn't go over very well for them. For whatever the reason is, possibly because people think that they're trying to emulate the WWE too much. But when I watch WWE, I'm not expecting Shakespearean shit. All right? When I'm watching the indies, I am. So there's that. All right, now I know we're into overtime here, but there's just two things I want to cover. Three things, sorry, I want to cover. I'm not going to get to the fucking comprehensive list of main roster wrestlers that you should hate and why. But you can always go find them. I'll put them in the show notes just because it's entertaining as hell, and I want to get it off my show prep. Three little pieces of news, and then we're going to go. Del Rio probably is not going to be renewing his year-to-year contract with the WWE. His contract's up at the end of September. His 30-day suspension is going to be up mid-September. As of right now, the question of his return is twofold. One, will the WWE be able to convince him to stay? Reportedly, Vince wants him to stay. Hunter wants him to go. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? Everything's still up in the air. His 30-day suspension is going to be up in probably about 10 days or so. So when that comes to pass, are we going to see him back on TV for the next 2 weeks, or is he going to stay at home and ride out the rest of his contract? Maybe if the WWE's smart, they will turn this into a bit of a gimmick where, and don't get me wrong, I like the fact that Hunter's no longer playing the douchey authority gimmick. I like where the storyline is going right now. But what I would like to see is maybe them turn this into a bit of a gimmick. Have Del Rio and Paige legitimately come out and cut some promos and stuff, bitching and moaning about how someone's trying to keep them apart. Like, play a little bit of the kayfabe. Is this kayfabe? Is it not kayfabe? Have some fun with it. Kind of like the Daniel Bryan Miz thing, okay? Have some fun with it. Whether he sticks around or not, whatever. But at least for those last 2 weeks, let them do something interesting, sink their teeth into it. Paige is on a much longer contract than Del Rio is. They might just issue her release when Del Rio goes. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Del Rio is on a year-to-year contract. His contract is up at the end of September, so who the fuck knows if he's going to be back. The Heath Slater not being signed, hottest free agent, whatever the fuck gimmick, is actually kind of hilarious in a way. And now he and Rhino are going to team up, and their tag team name is very unfortunate. Allegedly, their tag team name is Beauty and the Man Beast, which really sounds a lot like a tranny porn title. So maybe don't let the Zombie Princess come up with your team name. Maybe go back to the drawing board on that one. It's really quite bad. The last thing in the news, and before we get going here, I know I'm into overtime, but whatever. It's only a couple more minutes. Ryback has said in his brand new podcast, which depressingly is called Conversations with the Big Guy. I wish I was kidding. I thought it was a work. I thought it was a joke. That first of all, that Ryback has a podcast. Second of all, that it's called Conversations with the Big Guy. But whatever. In his inaugural episode, he has said that the contract that he turned down with the WWE was a 3-year deal for $1.5 million. Now, a lot of people would love to make $500,000 a year for 3 years. And given where he was going, I don't quite understand why he would turn that down. As much as I like Ryback, he's a mid-carder, and he will be for a very long time. I'm not sure how many indies are going to sign him or be able to afford him for that matter. He is not Cody Rhodes. He is not showing up, for example, at the Battle of Los Angeles for PWG this weekend. I don't know, man. I'm not one to say stay where you're not appreciated, but for 1.5 for 3 years, I'd probably stick around and try to maybe work a way to get my ass back into the main event picture, but whatever. That being said, I'm going to sign off this week. I've interviewed Mike McSugar a few times. I really like him. He's really hilarious. He's got a very funny, over-the-top gimmick. And he loves the fact that I'm a Ryback Mark because of the fact that he gets to make fun of me mercilessly. Now, he did a couple drops for me, and I thought I'd play one of the drops that I find the most amusing as I play out the show here. So enjoy this, and we'll see you next week back on Markout Radio.
You're listening to Markout Radio. I'm Mike McSugar. Ryback, you're a pussy.
Well, that was an abortion of a show. Should the mood take you, check out markoutradio.com and leave a comment. You can also find links there to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Stitcher channels. You can even leave a voicemail on our Skype. Just click the links and share them.